Good afternoon to everybody. Again, this is Jeffrey from the support team, and I'm going to be going through the color picker for both the Flash HTML side of the equation as well as the PhotoBiz store. So we have some slides, of course, prepared for you, so I'm just going to basically take you through it, show you some of the features of both, and then, like Danny said, we'll have some questions and answers at the beginning, or at the end, I'm sorry. So here we are talking about how to add some color to your PhotoBiz website. So one of the common questions that we get in support is that I'm looking to design or develop my website, and I want to create a virtual presence for my brand, and I'm not really sure where to start. And this is probably more in relation to folks who have an idea of what they want to accomplish virtually. They're just not sure where to start. So what we usually advise them is you want to start with at least 1 to 3 colors initially. You want to get some sort of framework or idea around what it is that you want to accomplish. So 1 to 3 primary colors, and then of course you can build the site from there via some of the tools that we have within the PhotoBiz control panel. So of course you'll log in to your PhotoBiz account, and once you click on the Flash HTML icon, you'll then have the opportunity to select the color picker icon. Again, the color picker will lead you to where you can actually create your specific color scheme for your website. With each template comes a canned or stocked color scheme. So for this particular template, you see that Monte Carlo has these 4 color schemes. In addition to those 4 color schemes, you have the opportunity to customize all 4 of those. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to note as well is that the color picker has kind of a twofold aspect to it. So if you have both a Flash and an HTML site, you're going to see the 2 tabs up above the actual template display. In addition to that, of course, you'll have the options down below. So to begin the customization chance to create your website or your color preference, you want to click on Customize next to any of these color preferences. Once you do that, then you'll start the whole process of what I call painting your virtual masterpiece. So I'm going to step you through some of the options that are within the control panel for the Flash HTML color picker. To start with is the General tab. The General tab basically deals with what your client and or customers will see initially. So of course that consists of your website background, the website page itself, and then the logo text. Now the logo text of course would be replaced, and that's really more of your header text, which can be found under the settings option within the control panel, and then you'll see an option there for header footer text. So again, if you have a logo uploaded, then basically this logo text would be bypassed, and your logo is actually what would be displayed. So again, here's where you actually start the painting of your website or your virtual masterpiece. One of the benefits that you have with the color picker is you have a couple of different ways to accomplish your color scheme or design element. One of which is for each of the options that are listed, like what we saw on the general page, for the options that you have here to enter what are called hex codes. So if you already have your hex codes from your designer, then of course you can use those in the applicable fields. But if you don't, you have the opportunity to use what's called the color picker. And the color picker will actually bring up a box where, based on the color preferences here, you can kind of select specifically the color option that you want. So basically you're utilizing the mouse, and to choose or select your specific color, you'll just click on the mouse, and then you'll see down in the hex code field the applicable hex code that would be entered. Next, we go to the Standard tab. So the Standard tab is going to deal with the virtues of information pages, for example. So on information pages, the main menu option might be information, and then that submenu option would be about photographer or about artist. So the page title that would appear on that page is where you basically would denote this particular color. The scroll bar would basically be the color that would be enabled if you had more text than what could be displayed within that text panel. And then of course the slider would actually be the control that you would use excuse me, to move up and down that text section. Next is the contact form. The contact form, of course, deals with where your client and or customer inquiries would be input. So again, it's a main menu option. You have a few options here as far as how the actual contact form would be displayed. So the form field background is actually the background or palette that the form field text would actually sit upon. The required asterisk is, of course, for any of those fields that you noted that are required. In other words, the client and or customer can't actually submit that form until they complete those required fields. And so you can note those by the asterisk color or preference here. The alert message background, again, is just another palette, again, like the form field background. But what you're doing here is when the pop-up box comes up, they'll actually see the actual alert text on this particular background. So of course you have the customization options here. Again, you can use hex code or you can just use the color picker boxes. Next is the menu options. This is what, of course, your clients will see immediately. So based on what you develop or design as far as the actual menu options are concerned, you can select the options here. As far as the menu background, again, this is going to be the actual palette that the text will actually sit upon. One of the suggestions that we have is that you make them contrasting colors so that you're not necessarily selecting two colors that are similar or the same, not necessarily the same, but very, very close. So you do want there to be, a pretty prominent contrast between the two. Selected menu item text, of course, is going to be the actual text that will be displayed or selected when you place your mouse over it. So a drop-down menu option would be an example of that. When you click on the drop-down menu option, the highlighted or selected menu item text is going to be that. And then the next two items deal with the background. So again, if we're utilizing a gallery page, any of the submenus or actually the gallery pages that would be within that drop-down menu, of course, you have your selection options here again for the background menu option as well as the item text. So the background is going to be the palette that it sits on, and of course the text would be the complement. Next is the list items page. This is more so for pages like testimonials, or if you have a links page like for videos and you have a description associated with those. So these preferences are going to control the elements on there. The web item description text is going to be the body of information that you have pertaining to that particular text or link that you're creating on that particular page. The item text, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. Again, it's going to be what actually appears above the description of the link that you're creating. And then the page button background and text relate to if you have a number of links and it requires a second or third page. So the background, of course, is going to be what the text would actually sit upon, and that would be the option that would allow clients to move from one page to the other as far as those list items are concerned. Next deals with the calendar. Now I know apart from some of the other pages or other options that we looked at, the calendar seems to be a bit extensive. You can see here from the example that I created that I only chose 3 color preferences. Kind of goes back to the rule that we were talking about or that we outlined with the initial slides. So ideally here you're not necessarily looking at really the complexity of the options that you have available, but more so to make it simplistic. What you're generally interested in is a book date box and the actual fields that are associated with book dates, for example, as well as the numbers that would show up within the calendar itself. Apart from that, we don't usually find that people do a whole lot of customization in this area. So again, if you kind of use the 3 color preferences, when you preview the site, you can kind of see how those colors play out. Next is the Popup Lightbox. This is the pop-up that actually appears if someone were to select one of the menu options that you have available. We also had an article about how you could embed the Facebook Lightbox within a pop-up window. And so basically by way of this pop-up Lightbox, there's the caption text, of course, for that pop-up Lightbox, in addition to the background that that text would actually be a part of. And then the border color, of course, would be whatever surrounds the actual video, for example, that may be playing. And then the page background actually deals with the palette that the media would actually sit upon. So before the actual video is displayed, this is the background color that would be displayed there. And then, of course, this is also pertaining to the page text. Then last but not least are the miscellaneous options that you have available. They kind of run the range of the gallery controls all the way down to the loader background and 4. So those are actually the icons that you may see spinning or deploying whenever your website is loading. The music bars, of course, are going to also control the full screen option. So you want to be mindful of that, particularly when you're talking about creating something that's within your branding or color scheme, is again to make those comparable so that they can be seen if your client and or customers want to take advantage of the fact of making the site either full screen or to mute or turn off the music. So that kind of concludes the portion of the Flash HTML side of the equation as far as the color picker is concerned. But we also wanted to show you the options that are available within the PhotoBiz store site. So again, you would click on the control panel main up at the very top. When you click upon main, it's going to bring you to the main page options that you can select from. Of course, we're going to select the store icon. When you select the store icon, you'll immediately be presented with the options that you see here, color picker, of course, being one of them. And when you click on the color picker, much like what you have from the standpoint of the Flash HTML side, you'll actually be able to see a number of customizable or stock color schemes that you can select from. They kind of run from the palette of pretty dark to pretty light and everything in between. Of course, you can start with any of these, and as you see here that you have the opportunity to customize them. Again, you can use the same options or virtues that you did over on the Flash HTML side, being that if you have hex codes, of course, you can put those in, or you can use the color picker. So here are some of the options that are displayed within the color picker for the store. I think what makes it a little easier in the store site is all your options are laid out on one page. So you're not necessarily having to go from one tab of options to another. They're all clearly laid out here. Now there can be a bit of a challenge as far as deciphering or determining what these particular options control. What I usually recommend is utilizing a color scheme that will kind of provide you the ability to see more prominently what's actually being affected, not only externally as far as the storefront is concerned, but also on your internal pages. And so here's an example of a color scheme that I created, which I called the Store Preview Color Scheme. And I've created this to kind of help facilitate the discussions that I have with all of you regarding questions that you have about the color picker, or if there's a particular element I want to change, what is it going to impact? And so my color scheme is pretty clownish in nature, but it kind of gets me acclimated to what's available to me or what I'm changing from the color preferences that we noted previously. So I wanted to show you how far-reaching some of those options can be. Apart from the Flash HTML side, some of the options that you'll see on the color scheme panel have kind of a far-reaching effect. So not only do they change some of the options that you intended to change, but they may also have some far-reaching effects. So like the highlight background button, for example, you'll see also controls not only the home, so the selected background item text, but also the icons or the labels that you see up at the very top of the store site. Of course, like you have on the Flash HTML site, the border site color is, pretty standard. It doesn't necessarily affect anything else. Non-selected text color is pretty much the same. And then navigation menu and drop-down basically are controlled here. And then, of course, you have your site background color. Just like on the Flash HTML side, you have the ability to use either the stocked background colors that we make available or the palettes that we have available, or of course you can upload your own, and that would basically replace what you see here. Let me go back for a second. The other thing that I also wanted to outline too is that within the store site, this would be what would be considered a Marquee Plus page. So what that allows you to do is to create more of a customized storefront, if you will. So in addition to providing information of what you have available, whether it's specials or incentives, in addition to that, you can also create boxes or list items or widgets, if you will, that upon clicking them, it will actually take the client to somewhere within your store site. You also have the option here of like a banner image as well. So here's a greater example of, again, how far-reaching the color preferences can be. So again, global button text color is basically the background for this particular message. And then you also see that non-selected perimeter text color also has some bearing upon the actual messages that are displayed within the boxes. So let's say, for example, you have an alert message where there's some criteria that must be satisfied before the client and or customer can move forward. All that information would be displayed in this box. The same would be true if they've selected a print and they have the opportunity to look at the next print or select the next print and attribute the options to that. This is the same panel that you would see as well. Again, the global background color also affects, you see two different options here, one of which is the ability to continue shopping so that they can browse more issues and attribute them to either prints or products, but also the highlight background color, which relates to the option for go to cart. So we're planning to make these available probably within a few weeks, just so that you have them available. I think that that will probably help facilitate some of the questions that people commonly have, particularly when you're talking about a more internal page. So you'll see down at the bottom, this is more from a product page perspective. So this isn't necessarily something that many clients may think of initially when they're making their color preferences on the storefront. Here again is another example. Now I wanted to show you all this one because I think again it shows you the complexity of what's actually impacted by way of, like I said, that initial options page as far as your color preferences are concerned. So as you can see, some of the options are intuitive and others maybe not so much, but they do have a common element associated with them. So the background colors for menu options are pretty much the same. You can see here that global text color also handles the actual information for that particular page so that your client and their customers know where they are exactly within the store, but that it also has an effect upon the options that are within the drop-down menu, also related to the main menu or main store item buttons that you have, and as well as the option to look at search criteria. Here you're talking about the non-selected color, which we looked back at the previous panel at. So again, that was more on a products page, and this is more from a packages page standpoint. So your non-selected color has a different effect on this page. So you can see that it's basically noting where specifically you are on the page, as well as highlighting the actual price of the item that you're making available. So it's beneficial to keep in mind that even if you wanted to change this specific color here, you're also affecting what the client and or customer will see from a cost perspective. And of course, you want that to be prominently displayed or at least seen, readily or easily. Again, the highlight text color is noted here. And then you also have the site content background color. So again, part of what you want to accomplish is to choose at least, we usually recommend 4, but 3 to 4 color preferences when you're working within the store. I find 4 works better, but again, I go back to the recommendation of creating a preview store color scheme so that you can kind of play around with these colors, and so you can see that's kind of what I created here. The other thing that I would impart upon you with the color picker is never be afraid to experiment. There are so many different options as far as color preferences, and I find in working with many clients, most don't stick with one. We always recommend trying to create a couple and basically test driving those on the various templates that we have available. Within the store site, we have 11 templates currently, and of course that will be growing in the future. But, even for us as web consultants, I mean, right now I think I have about maybe 14 different custom color schemes. And again, they kind of run the palette from some of the color schemes that we've sort of helped facilitate troubleshooting for you, as well as the ones that we've created for our own purposes. But you don't necessarily have to build 10. That's just basically a suggestion. At least one preview color scheme I would highly recommend, and then of course maybe a couple others for your brand. Use the copy tool to try out additional color schemes, so you don't necessarily have to start over from scratch. Once you create a custom color scheme, you can actually copy from the previous one, create a new one, and edit your color preferences from there. I think it makes it a lot easier, particularly if you have main aspects of your color preferences within that color scheme that identify your brand pretty readily, that you kind of use those as an opportunity to kind of jump off from, but also do some further exploration. Excuse me. And the preview color schemes option helps you quickly and easily compare the various options based on what you selected from the control panel. And I highly recommend doing this because, again, part of what you will find as you go further into the site, how far-reaching those options are once you stipulate them from the color picker control panel. The other thing that I would also recommend, just based on our experience with clients like yourself, is to basically go through the actual store site from beginning to end, all the way from the point of actually taking the client or yourself from the storefront through prints, because the drop-down menu options are also something that can have an effect on the branding or color preferences that you selected initially. So you also want to make sure that those are easily or readily seen, all the way to the point of checkout, particularly if you have special instructions that you've noted on a particular item or product that you want to ensure the client will actually input on. You'll need to make a complementary color so that they can actually see the text box that that information would fall within. So that basically concludes what we would cover, both from the standpoint of the Flash as well as the HTML side of the equation. Again, we'll be making these handouts available to you. And another point that I'll also make is we're also working to refine the color picker, both on the Flash and the HTML side, at least to make it a little more intuitive, or perhaps a little more informative from the standpoint of, if I make my color preferences within the control panel, is there a means for me to be able to see those, more proactively, or more so in the actual control panel page in which I'm working on, rather than having to preview. And that's why I thought it was best to show you kind of some examples. So again, Danny will be sharing this with you all in the future. But if you have any questions about utilizing the color picker, don't hesitate to give us a call or send in a support ticket. That's what we're here for, and we appreciate the opportunity, like I said, to help you bring your virtual masterpiece to life. Okay, I see that we have a couple of questions here. So the first question is there any way this page, external and internal colors diagram, can be available to look at when we work on our color scheme? Yes, ideally it's a suggestion that I myself have put into the idea bank, as some of my colleagues have. Again, I think what helps facilitate a greater comfort level with people making the adjustments within the store site, particularly if it's a site that's live. In other words, you have people going out there now that you have more of a comprehensive or informative means of providing you firsthand information of what is actually being controlled. So I will definitely share excuse me, the handouts with Danny, and like I said, we'll see how we can incorporate that within the control panel as well.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks again for joining us today in today's episode of the PhotoBiz Live webinar. And it looks like we've answered all of the questions that have come up in here. So if you do have any other questions in the future, please don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call the passionate support team here at PhotoBiz. You can reach us Monday through Friday toll-free from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks so much, and have a great afternoon.